Hi, thanks for joining us on Live with Squacky. I'm Val Kelly, otherwise known as Squacky Voice, and our special guest today is Marc Scott, voice actor and marketing pro. Thanks for joining us, Marc.
Thank you for having me, Val. Looking forward to this. It's going to be fun.
I'm super excited. So let's get started, as they always say on YouTube. So tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got started in the voiceover industry.
My story is like a lot of people in voiceover. I worked in radio and got downsized. I mean, there's a lot of us that did that. I started in radio in 1995, and I guess kind of by default, without even realizing it at the time, that was when I also started in voiceover. The very first responsibility that I had at the radio station that I was working at was doing commercials. And this is back in the day when you did commercials live to tape. Like you had your music bed on CD and you had sound effects on carts, and then you just recorded live while you were pushing all of the buttons to get a 30-second spot, because there was no such thing as digital editing, and kids these days, they don't even know how sweet they've got it. But yeah, so that was kind of my start was through radio, and then all through my broadcasting career being involved in doing commercials and stuff like that. And then at some point I was just like, hey, I could probably do a little bit of voiceover work outside of the radio station. And so kind of did it just for fun, kind of a hobby type thing, I guess. And then I want to say it was probably 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there that I kind of started doing it a little bit more seriously part-time. And then I ended up going full-time in 2012 when my last radio station got bought out and I got downsized and I needed a job, and I knew I didn't want to go back to radio again. So I was going to make voiceover work if it killed me.
Wow, that's an awesome story. That's really cool. I can totally hear it in your voice, that you had, like, you can sort of tell, oh, he's probably been in radio at some point, but in a good
It's
way,
a curse.
not in a bad way.
It's a curse. I've been working with numerous coaches to try and get rid of it, because it is a 20-year built-in that everybody, I keep saying it's like bell bottoms, right? Nobody thought bell bottoms were going to come back, but then one day bell bottoms came around again. And so I just keep hoping that the announcer voice, that one day everybody gets tired of this conversational thing and the announcer voice circles back around like bell bottoms, and then I'll be gold again.
Yeah, totally. That's really funny because I remember when I first started in voiceover, and same thing. Actually, I've never been in radio. It's not my thing, but I remember when I first started getting into it and thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a commercial demo. That was my first training. And I remember then after my training, for some reason I would like step in the booth and all of a sudden this crazy like announcer voice would come out. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what is going on right now? Like, I don't even talk like that normally. So when the whole conversational thing came around, it was like, okay, you really, like, you're not an announcer. You got to tone it down, So that's kind of funny. I think people have to really, that have probably more so that have been in radio, really have to think about that sometimes, yeah.
It's funny because it used to be that having a radio background or some kind of broadcasting background, it did actually play into your favor. And now you're almost better off not having it, because it's really hard to shake. This is how I talk. This is how I've talked for 20 some odd years, since my broadcasting career started. And so working with coaches, I work a lot with Everett Oliver, and sometimes you can see him. He just wants to beat his head off the desk because he just can't. He can't get it out of me, and I can't seem to get him to understand that this is me having a conversation.
Well, I think you sound great, so it's all good, and I'm sure you book tons of work with it. So that's what's important in the end.
Got to find your sweet spots. That's it. Find your sweet spots and play to your strengths.
Yeah, definitely. So that's an awesome start, at least. So I see that you have two websites, marcscottvoiceover.com, which is you as a voice actor, presumably, and then marcscottcoaching.com, which looks to be more of a site for you as a voiceover marketing coach. Can you tell us a little bit about each of those sites?
Yeah, so, I mean, it all started out as marcscottvoiceover.com. It was one website, and I read a book by Gary Vaynerchuk a number of years ago. The book was called Crush It, and one of the things that he talked about was you got to create content. If you want people to be able to find you online, you've got to create content. And so I wanted to get found and get known for voiceover. And so the natural thing for me, from what I gathered from Gary Vaynerchuk's book, was I guess I got to start blogging. Well, what the heck do I blog about voiceover? Because I don't really know anything about voiceover. And so I just started writing blogs about the things that I was learning as I was building my voiceover business. At that point in time, there were performance coaches, but there was no such thing as a voiceover business coach. There was nobody teaching voice actors how to do marketing or anything like that. You either had agents and booked all your work that way, or you were on 5 different casting sites and booked all your work that way. So that was kind of all there was. So I just started learning how to be an entrepreneur, really is what it was, and blogging about those experiences. And over time, I built up several years worth of blogs just doing what I thought Gary V wanted me to do. And there came a point when I realized that not only was I getting found in for voiceover, and people were hiring me for voiceover as a result of it, but I found myself in a position where people were coming to me from a kind of a mentor and coaching standpoint, looking for me to help them do the things that I had figured out along the way when it came to the marketing, the business side of voiceover. And so that was when, I guess about 2 years ago, maybe, I made the decision to kind of split the two things and turn marcscottvoiceover.com just strictly into voiceover. That's just for my voiceover clients, and then move my blog and video content and resources and stuff like that over to marcscottcoaching.com, so that I had 2 entities to reach out to 2 very unique audiences.
Yeah, I think that's really great, actually, to separate them. Like, I kind of did a similar thing with my personal, voice acting career, and then with the Mid-Atlantic voiceover, because they're 2 kind of separate but together things. It's like me as a voice actor and me as a company. So yeah, I think that's a really great idea, and a great resource for people. I saw that you have tons and tons of different trainings on there that people can do with you, and that's amazing. So you're known in the industry, to me at least, as a marketing pro. So what would you say some of the biggest marketing mistakes are that voice actors make, and what could they be doing instead?
I think the number one mistake is that they're not doing it, period.
Yeah.
And I think that it's still one of these things where the defaults are agents and casting sites. And so the theory is, as long as I get a really nice collection of agents, and people go out and try to collect 5 or 6 agents or 10 agents. I know people that have 10 plus agents, and they sign up for a membership on every casting site that is available and known to man, and they assume that is their marketing, and that's all they have to do. And then after a while, they start to realize that they're not booking work consistently, or they're well, great, I got 10 agents, but all 10 agents are sending me the exact same scripts, and so that's not helping. And there obviously are challenges with casting sites and the way that certain casting sites do business, and so that doesn't always work into their favor.
Right.
And so I think that they're just not doing marketing, and I think there are a few different reasons for that, and probably the number one reason, and this is a conversation that I had with somebody recently, was I'm a business guy first. I'm an entrepreneur first. And I've kind of taught myself the creative side. I am not naturally that creative brain. I didn't do drama classes, and I didn't do music classes, and I didn't do art classes and all that sort of stuff that a lot of people traditionally in this business are more kind of that geared that way, geared to that brain. And so I found that for me, it was a lot easier to take the entrepreneurial side of my brain and adapt it to voiceover than I think it is for people who are naturally creative and trying to learn the business side of things. I think it's really challenging. And so I think that's probably the number one reason why a lot of people don't do it, is because it doesn't come naturally to them. And it's tough to try to figure it out. There are 100 different voiceover business coaches now. There wasn't one several years ago, and now everybody is a voiceover business coach, and they're all selling different narratives of what is marketing and how you should do marketing and how you need to make money and what you need to do. And so it gets really confusing. It gets really overwhelming. I think probably the number one, number two, maybe number three complaints that I hear from voice actors is that it's confusing, it's overwhelming, I don't know where to start. And so because of that, they just don't. So
Yeah.
I think that's the big challenge, is just getting over the fear, kind of trying to demystify it a little bit, and understanding that what you do as a voice actor is a valuable service.
Right.
You offer a valuable service, and you should be proud and excited to tell other people about that service so that you can be compensated accordingly. It's just like, when the toilet breaks, you call the plumber. When the car breaks, you call the mechanic. They offer a valuable service that you need, and you don't hesitate to connect with them. There are people that are out there that are looking for voiceovers, whether it's for their commercial, for their video, for their phone system, for their e-learning course, or whatever. And so as a voice actor, you offer a valuable service. You offer a solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And when you see it that way and think about it that way, I think it makes it a little bit easier to start reaching out to some of these people and actually doing the marketing that you need to be doing.
Yeah, definitely. That's great advice. I think exactly what you were saying is that a lot of people in the industry are that creative type. I'm definitely one of them. Like it doesn't come naturally to me. But when I started my own company, I had to come up with ways to get the word out, because if you don't, it's not just going to fall in your lap. Like I had to figure out, and this kind of leads into my next question about social media. This is that I had to figure out, Twitter and Facebook, and I kind of Facebook I was already on, but LinkedIn and Instagram and some of them I still haven't totally figured out. How do you handle that? Like what are your top 3 strategies for tackling social media marketing? Because I feel like you can either have a balance, or you can, which is probably a healthier way to handle it, or you can, like when I started out, I was literally, I don't like to use the word addicted, but I spent like all of my time on Twitter. Like I was, it was ridiculous. And I don't feel like I was getting anywhere, and I made a lot of really bad mistakes at the beginning until I kind of figured out how it worked. And now I love it. And I do actually try to find a little bit of balance now and not spend 24 hours a day on it, because that's ridiculous. But what are some strategies that you use for handling all those different social media sites?
The number one tip that I give to people is the fact that you don't have to be on all of them.
Yeah.
So that's rule number one right there. You do not have to be on all the social networks in order to effectively market yourself, in order to find opportunities and find voiceover leads and make connections and develop relationships. So I think that's one of the big myths. People see me everywhere and they assume that you have to be everywhere, and that's not true. I am everywhere. I have systems that help me to be able to do that. It wasn't always easy. It didn't always come natural. But my advice is that you pick 1 or 2 social networks that maybe play to your natural strengths, or maybe it's, you're picking social networks that you enjoy the most, or maybe it's picking 1 or 2 social networks that make the most logical sense for the type of work that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just really master those 1 or 2 networks, and then don't even worry about all the other ones for now.
Yeah.
Because you are going to find far more opportunity mastering 1 or 2 social networks than you are going to find trying to spread yourself across 4, 5, 8, 10. That's just going to overwhelm you. It's going to wear you down. You're not going to use the platforms the way that they're supposed to be used. It drives me absolutely insane when I see somebody use a service like Hootsuite is a prime example, where you can create one post and it will automatically share that post to Twitter, to Facebook, and to LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not formatted properly for any of them.
Oh.
And so it doesn't work as effectively.
Right.
And so that's why, people think that they're being more efficient because they're using a service like that to get the message out everywhere. But all you're really doing is ticking off all the people on LinkedIn because you've got this post for Twitter that's got 1,000 hashtags in it that don't even belong on LinkedIn, or you've written a really, really long post for Facebook, but you've posted it to Twitter as well. And on Twitter, it doesn't appear properly because it gets cut off midway through the first sentence because there's a character limitation. And
Right.
like, it's not the right way to do it. So you're
Right.
better off to just pick one or two, learn how to use them properly, and focus on those one or two and devoting your efforts to those one or two. And you're right, you do have to have balance as well. Like one of the things that I always talk about with people is if you're going to do direct marketing for your own voiceover business, and you're going to find, you're going to use maybe some of these social media tools to find your leads, but then you want to reach out to those leads via email or via cold calling or whatever, then there does come a point during your day where you have to just turn off all your notifications. You got to put your phone in a different room. You got to turn off the notifications on your computer. You got to get your butt off Facebook because it is a time-sucking vampire.
Yeah.
And it can be really fun. But like you said, it is addictive. It is addictive. And part of that is that, smartphones and constant notifications and Twitter alerts and email alerts and text alerts, they've reprogrammed our brains. It's like a hit, like a drug hit every time we get a notification on our phone. That's why we look right away and why we walk around constantly staring at them like zombies. And so there does come a point where I do tell people, you got to turn that stuff off for an hour or two every day and just laser focus on the tasks that you need to get done. Otherwise, you're not going to get them done.
Yeah.
It's too easy to jump on social media and fall down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely. I think that is definitely one of the easiest things to do is to get sucked into it. And then there's no turning back once you're in. It's like, when I first started Twitter, I had notifications on. So my phone would like blow up anytime someone decided to do like a Follow Friday or something, like that.
Yep.
And I was like, why is my phone like binging all the time? Like, this is crazy. I got to do something. And I think what it was is that when I first started using Twitter, I also had like recently gotten a smartphone, so I didn't realize that I could actually turn off my notifications. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, thank God, I don't have to listen to this bing all day long. Or I mean, I could have just turned the sound off too, but you know what I mean? Like on the main screen,
That's
it's
it.
just all the stuff.
It dings and vibrates all day long, and you want to check every single time. And I get it. I get it. And that's why there comes a point where you just got to put it, you've got do not disturb mode, or you've got airplane mode, or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you don't take advantage of those features, man, it's hard to get stuff done. It really is hard to get stuff done.
Definitely. So do you think that, so if people are making these contacts on social media like Twitter and LinkedIn especially, those are, I think, I mean, I like them all for different reasons, I think, but I feel like I still haven't figured out Instagram. I really use Instagram just to like post pictures of like whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. Here's my
like
dinner.
Everybody's just posting pictures. Oh, look what I had for dessert. That's what Instagram is. Instagram is just dessert.
I feel like I haven't, there probably is a way to use Instagram for business, and I do have a business account, but I still haven't totally figured it out yet. So I'm going to leave that one alone for the moment. But I feel like with, say you're making these leads and connections on Twitter and LinkedIn especially, because right now I'm not a super fan of like Facebook, just because it's like so many pages and so many people, and I don't even know if anyone sees my posts anymore. That's probably a whole nother session, but
they don't.
Yeah,
they don't.
It's
Facebook
crazy.
has killed all organic reach. They don't.
Yeah, I feel like no one likes any of my posts anymore, and no one even sees them. So I'm not totally giving up, but I feel like it might be a waste of my time. So
yep.
But on those other two sites, if you're making these contacts with people, what's the next step then? Say you make a connection with someone on LinkedIn in particular, and it's either for a voiceover job, or maybe you want to reach out to them as a potential client. What's the next step then? Like, what would you say would be the best follow-up? An email, or how would you handle that?
Yeah, I think email is probably one of the best ways. One of the things that I say, and it's a quote I picked up somewhere, I kind of paraphrase it, but it's basically marketing is all about building relationships. and building relationships takes time. So the number one thing that you got to understand when you're going into this, and this is where a lot of voice actors give up, is you can't just make that initial connection and then sit back and wait for them to hire you.
Right.
Because they may not be doing anything that they need you for right now. They
Mm-hmm.
may not have anything for you until 6 months down the road. And so it's your responsibility, if you're going to be effective at your marketing, to make sure that every once in a while you're getting yourself back top of mind with them, so that when it does come time for them to hire, you're the voice actor that they're thinking of, because you're the last voice actor that they heard from. So that's where you can use social media tools to stay engaged with people, and use email as well. And having a system in place that once you make that initial contact, and you know, maybe you're looking for ways to start that conversation, and then just building that relationship, getting to know them, getting to understand the work that they do, getting to understand their needs. Maybe you get to understand some of the cycles that they work in, depending on the companies and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of really important. And, you know, since you did talk about Instagram, let me just give you I'll give you a couple of quick tips on Instagram just for the
Okay.
fun of it. We're doing this,
Good.
right? So here's the thing with Instagram. Instagram is all about the hashtags. And that's how people are going to find you. That's how you're going to make connections. And you're allowed to post up to 30 hashtags with your Instagram posts. So when you're doing Instagram and you're hoping, like if you're looking for voiceover opportunities, it's about trying to figure out what are the hashtags that the people that are potentially going to hire me for, what are the hashtags that they're looking up, so that we can make those connections. So that's the number one way to use Instagram. The number two way to use Instagram is because it allows you to do video. And particularly, I think this is particularly true with character and animation voiceover. You can record 30-second demos on Instagram of character voices and stuff like that you do, and hashtag it accordingly. And that's a way that you can potentially get found. Now that the 6-second commercial has become a trend, you'll see a lot of voice actors posting 6-second demo clips on Instagram. And same thing, just using the hashtags and trying to figure out the hashtags in order to get found. So there you go. There's your bonus free Instagram tip just for having me on and hanging out.
Perfect. Well, I actually do that already, like my crazy nonsense of new characters and stuff like that. So, but I need to work on the hashtag thing a little bit more as far as like fine tuning that. But yeah, those are great tips. I'm excited about that. I'm like vigorously taking notes over here. So, I saw that you have a course on getting paid and raising rates, and without giving away every detail of this course, because of course we want people to sign up for it, what is a brief snippet of advice you can offer about the rates topic so that voice actors can make sure they get paid fairly and efficiently?
I'll give you two different tips that cover both sides of it: raising rates and getting paid. So for raising rates, rule number one, it is a lot easier to negotiate down than it is to negotiate up.
Okay.
So if you start too low, if you throw out a low ball number, you're not going to get up from that number. And so particularly if you're working with a client that you're hoping, like if you get in with a production studio that's going to be sending you work consistently, you want to make sure that you're establishing a fair rate from the very beginning, because it's going to be really hard to raise the rates later on.
Okay.
Don't compete on price. Remember that you offer value. And so you're going to compete on quality and the quality of your work and the service and what you offer. And so that's the raising rate side. On the getting paid side, my thing is, the easier that you make it to get paid, the more likely that it is that you will get paid. Right. And so I have clients that pay me by check. I have clients that pay me by PayPal. I have clients that pay me by like Western Union, because there are certain overseas countries that can't do PayPal. Okay. I have a page on my website where people can do secure credit card payments. And I really try to make it easy for people to pay me. That definitely makes life a lot easier. And then the second thing that I'll say on that is, don't assume your clients are trying to screw you. Just because you didn't get paid at the 30-day mark, if for example, you use 30-day terms, just because day 31 rolls around and you haven't got paid yet, don't assume that your clients are trying to screw you. Don't jump on the defensive. Don't get angry. Don't start firing off emails. Don't start sending threats and all that sort of stuff. There's a reason why you haven't been paid. And sometimes you just need to know that narrative and figure out what that narrative is. You know, maybe you're working for the production company and the production company hasn't got paid by the client yet. And so they're in just as crappy of a situation because they want to pay you, but they're still waiting to get paid themselves. Or, you know, maybe, you know, I've had a situation where the individual that I was working with went off on maternity leave and my invoice just fell through the cracks. They weren't trying to screw me. It was an honest mistake. Like there's 1,000 different reasons why you're not getting paid, and none of them have to do with them trying to screw you. And so sometimes I think that we default to that and want to jump on the defensive really, really soon. I don't start throwing out aggressive language, and even then it's not super aggressive language, but I don't get to that point until I'm about 6 months.
Okay.
At 6 months I start to get serious, and that doesn't happen very often. You know, once or twice maybe a year I have to deal with something like that, but I'm going on 100% payment rate for this is either, I can't even remember, this is 4th or 5th year in a row, 100% payment rate on literally over 1,000 invoices, probably like almost 1,200 or 1,300 invoices. So, and I've never had to, one time I had to threaten the possibility of legal action, one time in 1,200 invoices.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's really a good record, you know. So it means that you're doing a lot of things right, which is great. So that's really good. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that people struggle with, and making it clear about their payment terms, things like that. All of that has to be very clearly defined. I figured that out in, you know, just running Mid-Atlantic voiceover, just trying to make sure that the language is clear on refunds and things like that, and if I'm going to offer them and if I'm not, and all of that kind of stuff. It's all a kind of a difficult topic to approach because you want to be fair, but you also want to get paid. So it's
always really have a paper trail.
Yeah.
Always have something that you can turn back to in email. And even if you're one of these people that if you deal with clients on the phone, and you know, every once in a while I have a client that prefers to do things over the phone, I'll always send a summarized email after. This is what we talked about. This is the rate we discussed. This is the scope of the project, so that now there is a paper trail, and it's not just you know, well, we talked about it over the phone and it's my word against their word or whatever. So you know, you have to be smart and protect yourself in that regard. Yeah,
definitely. That's really good advice. So, Marc, we know that you're going to be at the Mid-Atlantic Voiceover Conference this year on November 9th through 11th in Herndon, Virginia, and we're super, super excited that you're going to be there and absolutely honored that you would take the time to do that. So tell us just a little bit about what you're vaguely going to be doing there, just so people have an idea of a topic to a certain extent, even if it's not totally finalized.
We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to lay down marketing essentials for voice actors, and kind of give you, demystify it a little bit, and try to take some of the scariness and the confusion and the uncertainty of, you know, when I say the word marketing, you know, a lot of people just instantly shudder. Like it just, you know, it invokes terror and fear, and it shouldn't. There's no reason for it to. And I get it, because it wasn't that long ago that I was in the exact same position. I didn't really, I mean, I knew I needed to market, but I didn't know what I had to do or how to do it. And so, because I'm a nice guy, I spent probably about 2 years doing absolutely everything wrong and making all of the mistakes, so that now I can help other voice actors avoid that part. So I just did all the crappy, stupid stuff on behalf of everyone. I just did it all and figured out the right way to do things. And now I just try to help you, you know, skip that 2 year period of utter chaos when you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, well, that's actually fantastic, because I'm sure a lot of us have been making some horrible mistakes, and that's what we want to try to avoid. I definitely am looking forward to those sessions, because I am, you know, I've gotten a little better with marketing, but I have to say that when I first started voiceover, I mean, that first, I was talking about this with Sarah Sherman the other day in her interview I did with her, is that my first demo sat on a shelf for like years and years and years. And I was like calling radio stations like, hey, don't you guys want to hire me? And they're like, sweetie, your voice is like great for animation, but not for radio. And I was like, okay, I'll just go over here and do whatever, and like if I had, that was the marketing aspect was really what was missing from that initial course that I took on voiceover. That was something that was really lacking. And because it wasn't included in that initial training that I took, even though I've taken a lot of training since then, I do think it's something that I definitely need more help with and want to really actively be learning, as I'm sure a lot of people do. So I'm sure that your sessions will be completely full when you're there, which will be fantastic. And we're really looking forward to having you there. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank
And
you.
everybody check out Marc's website at marcscottvoiceover.com, and I'll put the link in the description below this video. And also marcscottcoaching.com will be there as well. And we look forward to seeing you all in November at NABO 2018. And everybody have a great night. And thanks again, Marc.
Thank you very much, Val. It was fun.